Good evening. You are watching the Heritage Talk. I am your host, Mwandem Ding. One of the greatest things about being a South African is that you are part of a rainbow nation. Our country gets to share with the rest of the world an amazing gift of our diversity, the assortment of the different cultures within our nation. Joining me this evening, my dear friends, is a gentleman by the name of Mr. Fadil Bakhi, and he is going to speak to us tonight about the Malay culture. Mr. Bakhi, how are you today?
I'm fine, thank you very much, Monde, and hello to everyone who's participating or going to listen to this cast. It's indeed an honor for me to share some light on obviously this very important contributing culture in our beautiful country. So my name is Fadil Bakhi, and I'm currently the head coach of the Young Caballeros Malay Choir, who's affiliated to the Cape Malay Choir Board, which represents something like 40 choirs. There are other organizations who also have similar choral competitions, but the Cape Malay Choir Board has been in existence since 1938. So that is what, 82 years. And yes, we've got obviously a great history and contribution, and certainly looking forward to the future and involving, I suppose, exporting the culture and sharing with obviously the talented people of South Africa and abroad this beautiful musical expertise and celebration of years and years of tradition and culture as we know it through music. So, do you want me to elaborate? Yeah, or you will go with the questions, thanks.
Yeah. So it is indeed an honor for us to have you here as well. So I was just wondering whether you can tell our people perhaps what is the significance of music in the Malay culture.
Right, so essentially, when we refer to Malay, my view on that is it is indeed a rainbow nation. So very often people associate Malay with people of the Islamic faith. Yes, largely that is true. I tend to have a different view on the basis of, if we go back to District 6, we had people of all ethnicity living together. So, and in any case, the Cape Malay essentially is, as was established, yes, the slaves that came from Malaysia, Java, and all those places, the East Indies, under the Dutch rule. But the Malay community, and with a little bit of history that I know, because I'm not an historian, is essentially intermarriages that happened between Malay people, the local, the inhabitants, the Khoisan, the people who, the natives of this country, and obviously slaves that came from East Africa, from the Indies, Indian continent, etc. So from various places, and I believe that, so hence my reason to say that I believe that Malay doesn't necessarily refer to Muslim, it refers to the people of the Cape. So as a starting point. So in terms of music, music played a fundamental role in terms of social events, regulatory purposes. It was also a case of transmitting, as I said, we were under Dutch rule or colonial rule in the 17th century. And with the establishment of carpenters, masons, essentially with those skills, but ultimately the bulk of the people, including the the native people born in South Africa, they were essentially slaves. And part of the music, as I alluded to in another conversation, was there were actually some freedom songs. Some of so we have in our culture, we have what we call the traditional songs, being the Netherlands lied, which is Netherlands as you know it, which emanates from Dutch folk songs. These songs were brought here, yes, by the Dutch, because they tried obviously to encourage the culture. So it's a case of cultural transfer. In some cases forced. In other cases, Afrikaans is a language that developed over the years. So it's not a pure language. It's as I said, it's got Germanic roots, but actually it's got influences from the local African languages, from the Malayan languages, Javanese. So there's a lot of words that one would actually find used as Afrikaans developed. So contrary to popular belief, Afrikaans was developed by the local people, and that is all the local people, right? That's a point which a lot of people, the history books will not necessarily tell you that, but fact is that when I say the local people, the slave community, that's where the language started. And the reason for that is they wrote songs, there was freedom songs, there was all kinds of songs. They even had some satires where they were making fun of the slave masters. That is where the comic, or the mopje, as known in that tradition, it was a way of communicating secret. So understandably, it developed. But also by the same token, when I refer to cultural transfer, as all these people basically gathered from various parts of the world, but essentially from the East Indies, they brought with different styles of singing. Right now, obviously, we know music generally is from a Western tonal scale. And with the slaves coming to the southern part of Africa, they brought with the Eastern tonal scale. Because that is driven by rituals, religious rituals, and usage of language, etc. So that influenced the style of singing, which we know as the Cape Malay style of singing, specifically the traditional being essentially in Netherlands. And what you'll find here, this is a fusion. It's a fusion between Eastern music and Western music, where you have a lead singer, which acts as the conductor, because Malay choirs do not sing with a conductor. And I will explain that. But essentially, you have a lead singer who is he would sing, and the chorus will be the entire choir. In the former years, they would sing in a 2-point harmony. As we advanced over the years, we went into 3, 4, 5-part harmony, even 6, with the advent of time and obviously people becoming musical students. So typically the traditional singing, as I said, it's a fusion, where you have somebody typically like me that is one of the shall I say, competitors over many years. I was trained, but now this kind of art is actually passed down from generation to generation. So I remember my late grandmother, paternal grandmother, she taught, and this is not just common to my family, it was most families, where the mothers of the house, they were actually the music teachers, but music taught by ear. So they would make the food on a Sunday, and they would sing. And the children, in my case, my father, they were 4 brothers, they would be the chorus. They would basically, be the choir, and they join in. But this was a way of passing down the tradition or the heritage of Malay Netherlands singing. That obviously I wasn't witness to, because I was probably still an idea, but it was passed through my older siblings. So yes, in terms of the role of music, it's multifunctional. It's celebratory. It was in cases where songs were history, and also just for enjoyment, ultimately. but a distinction. So there's influences from shall I say, religious perspectives, but Malay culture and religion is two different things. It's two different aspects. The Malay culture, the singing as we know it, is purely cultural transfer or traditions passed down. Influences of the perform life, for example, like I need to gospel singing or singing hymns in the church. It's the style that's passed on, but in terms of the connection from a religious perspective, there's no connection really.
All right. Yeah, you've said a mouthful, and it's
Well,
valuable information indeed. So tell me, over the years, we've seen a fairly diversified approach to how I'm specifically talking about the Malay competition now in the choral space. So we've seen a fairly diversified approach in that competition specifically, in that about 30 years ago, you probably would have seen people of a similar ethnic group, but now you have become more diversified. Would you perhaps share, ideas as to how that came about?
okay, so if we step back, the Cape Malay Choir Board was formed in 1938. The influential people behind that was Dr. I.D. du Plessis. They saw the value of the contribution of, let's say, the Malay community. But I think it was also a case of Afrikaner nationalism, where it was a case of protecting the language. So that was one aspect, but I think in terms from a musical aspect, there was also interest. We also had at the time some Professor von Vermelo, yes, was the guy's name. He in fact did research and was very much interested in the culture. Recordings which you can find at the University of Leiden, and he did. I think he was born in 1894. He started recording in 1956. The Malay style. So yes, it was formed. A competition was formed, and also very contributing to that time or era was the band called the Dante. I'm going to show a CD that I recorded. Right.
Oh wow!
Which is really, yeah, it was done in my studio, and it reflects obviously the Cape and the local communities. Wow. And they all passed on. They are they were called the Dante brothers.
Okay.
So, sort of pioneers.
Was that Bokap that I just
family, but one of the well-known families.
Yeah, okay.
That's Bokap, yes.
Okay.
And that's the group. And this was actually myself and as the executive producer and the engineer with the three generations of family. Now, the point I want to make here, you'll see in this photo, the banjo and this little cello, which is a bass, and obviously the guma, right? So essentially, or initially, it was just playing at weddings and social functions. But then with the establishments of Malay Choir Board, we had choral competitions. But then in those days, what they had was a lead singer, and with a combined chorus, which became the Nederlands, as we know today as the Nederlands lead, right? So with the competition, it was, I would say, it was a lead singer and then just a baritone voice, right? There was no beautiful sounds, but in fact, very often they were also had very individual sounds. It wasn't choral music as we know it today. But over time, what happened was, so they would use very basic instruments, a banjo, a guitar, sometimes a mandolin, depending on the influence. But over time, as we got people studying music, now the difference between the Malay choirs and other choirs is typically your church choirs or vocal choirs, gospel choirs, they are musically trained. They are musically literate. Malay community, it was probably few and far between. But they had a natural, they were very good in everybody taught by ear. I was taught by ear. I teach by ear. So ultimately, it's a skill you develop over the years. But I think from the 60s, so you'd find over a long period of time, the music evolved. And how did it evolve? Well, so typically you would have very basic folk songs that would be sung as what we call a solo. And then you'd have a similar Dutch song would be taken and like Daar Kom Je Alabama into a rhythmical beat, and that will be your comic. And then you'd have the Netherlands where, as I said, first it was a combined chorus, but then eventually they added the singer and he would lead and the choir would follow, right? And typically you'd find what people then sang as a combined chorus or a choral piece became what we call the Nederlandse liedje, with the lead singer and the choir behind following. Then we got into the 60s with the radio, or 50s with radio. People started to listen. Just got my screensaver on, my apologies. So I believe with the advent of radio, obviously the guys in the choirs or the coaches, they were exposed to different tunes, different genres of music, Neapolitan, world music essentially, right? As well as cathedral music. And this is where the music started to change, where the choirs now started to sing in harmonies, in part harmonies. And then we had the era where television came in. And again, it was progression. Then the internet, as we know, the Internet of Things, where people are able to collaborate and learn and find stuff online. So over a period of 80 years, the music has evolved. It's actually advanced. You find that, as I said before, the guys who teach by memory. And then you started people attending music school, becoming music literate, etc. And further, what happened was, because of the advancement and because of the exposure, because of television, you started having choirs, other choirs like your apostolic choirs and other church choirs for different denominations. So they started taking interest, and obviously what contributed to the growth and to the actual competitiveness of the choirs. As we went on, 5 years ago, was it 2015? Yes. I actually instructed as the chairman and head coach of a choir to our guys to say, let's go into the townships, because I believe there's a wealth of musical talent, untapped talent. And that is young Caballeros started getting in church choirs or members of organizations of choirs from Nyanga, from Khayelitsha, from Gugulethu. And for me, that was extremely enriching, because I always knew that there's this untapped potential and talent. And we blended it, obviously, with our style of singing. Now, there's 4 categories within the Malay singing. We've got the combined chorus, which is typically a Western choral piece. It's either already a scored piece or a known piece, or a hymn or classical song, or it could be somebody composing their own pieces, but it's a scored music for an orchestra or for piano, with choir, with SATB, TTBB, tenor, baritone, bass. We are essentially male choirs. So that is the culture is sort of based around that. But obviously, we've also got in the minstrel fraternity, they have SATB, so they have obviously females as well.
Yeah.
But in essence, what happened, we started, and I happened to meet Mr. Bongani Makatiana, composer, and we started collaborating because what happened specifically for our choir, we were very good in the Netherlands because that was my forte. But we often found ourselves lacking in the combined chorus because some of the other choirs were more advanced, because they actually went out and they went to get people that were schooled in music, and obviously we needed to change, and obviously that's what we did. And once that happened, obviously, we could start level the playing fields. So I think it's a natural progression, but it's also a case of, in order to grow the culture, you need to open doors. You need to, let's say, get the exposure. Music is like that. Music is that everybody understands. It transcends ethnic boundaries. It transcends linguistic boundaries. It transcends national boundaries, religious boundaries. So that is the beauty of music. Everybody loves a beautiful tune or an awesome piece of music, and that's what makes people happy. So that is fundamentally this evolutionary process over time. And what we find is that the youth of today, I find them extremely dynamic. Of course, the tools at hand, like I said, is if you go on to the fact that we are talking, I'm sure soon we will be coaching our choir. In fact, soon, very soon, over Zoom. We'll be sitting and you'll be conducting from there. Now, coming to the question about a conductor, why doesn't Malay Choir sing with a conductor? Well, I think it's, in the first place, as I said, historically, music was people that wasn't musically literate. Right? But they had a fantastic ear, still had fantastic skill. But so the focus was on synchronization. The focus was on feeling the music. So don't try and out-sing the person next to you. It's a case of balancing and harmonizing and producing beautiful tunes while in sync. And it became an art. So what may have been at the time a shortcoming was actually became a skill. So, I mean, you've been exposed to that where we sing in competition. Sometimes it can be difficult, especially with a large audience with their sound problems, but it is ultimately comes down to how well is your choir prepared, how well are they synchronized, how well are they balanced, how great is the discipline. So I think, and that is now part of the rules of competition that we sing with our conductors. In a sense, it kind of even the playing field. So at the end of the day, it comes down to how well are you prepared. Change, I'm not sure. It's like that for the last 8 years. I think it's quite competitions to sing without a conductor.
Yeah, I've always wondered. So yeah, you know, thank you for sharing that insight. You know, because it's been a question that has been continuously asked by many. You know, because and I was going to mention this earlier, that you know, this idea of roping in people of different ethnic groups. As much as you may have thought that, you know, it was going to sort of embrace your singing and enhance it, but it has also given others an opportunity to learn about your culture. And for me personally, I think that's very empowering.
Yeah, I think as I said, I saw the opportunity years ago, and in my personal capacity now, it's a case of you want to leave a legacy. I have been involved with music for the last 40 years. So I'm in the twilight. Hopefully I don't look like it, of my career, but I said to myself, what legacy do I want to leave? If you've spent so much time and money because of the love or the passion for music, for your culture, do you want it just to put it on a shelf? No, you want to export it, you want to share it, you want to contribute to the greater good of humanity. So the focus here was to share the culture so that other people can also enjoy it. Because as I said, very often the misinterpretation was Malay choir music is basically part of our religious belief. No, it's not. There's a distinct difference between religious belief and traditions and customs that was developed. Yes, there's certain influence. Like, for example, if I come back now, when people of other ethnicity, join, there was now quite with the Red Fez. Now, let me give you some history about this fez, right? Which is essentially, I'm going to show you one or two. There's a red face.
Yes.
There's the black face now.
My favorite.
The name is actually Kefia, which is an Arabic name, or Kufia, as we call it in the Cape. You know, in the Cape has their own language, Kaps. We speak Kaps. But in essence, this is in the Arabs call it a tarbush, but this is a hat. It's nothing else but a hat. And it's a hat that was introduced, even the Greeks wear it. You'll see in the Greek Orthodox Church, they wear the black one, the black fez, right? But historically, the word fez is it's a city in Morocco. So some historians say it comes from Morocco, some say it comes from Turkey, which is also true, but it even existed in the Balkans, which is like the Balkan areas, Balkan countries, right? Which is Romania, Bulgaria, and those places, Bosnia and those places. But the history behind this is a traditional hat worn by, in fact, there were classes. So if you wore these hats, you were known to be either a noble person or a very intelligent person. And the black one was obviously the royalty, right? Now, there's different views on this. There's some people who do not necessarily agree with the wearing of the hat. You will have different views. So the way the name fez comes from is the dye. This is a felt material. So the dye that they use to color this fez comes from a place which is called Fez in Morocco, right? But as I said, the Turkish army used to wear this during the Ottoman Empire. You will find that, so different usage over time. Within the Middle East, some people used it when, like, for example, this is how I believe it was imported in South Africa. Yes, from people coming from Turkey, as well as when people went on pilgrimage, they would go to Mecca and come back with a red hat or the fez with a tassel, a black tassel, would indicate that they did the pilgrimage. So you see, but that's got nothing to do with religion. That is purely tradition or customs. There's, as I said, different views on this hat. At one stage, I felt that we should lose it, and on the basis of to break that link, that it's linked to our religion. Because if you look at Malay choirs today, I'm probably won't be far off if I say yes. In the former years, it was 100% or 90% or 80% Muslim. Now it's probably 50-50. In some cases, your choirs the entire choir is non-Muslim, right? So one would probably say leave the hat, but yeah, that will start another war. So that's just the history behind this hat comes in, but it's been adopted by, it's been worn by obviously senior people or forefathers, and just over the years carried on. And it's a kind of an identity. So when you look at the choir, then you'll know that's the Malay choir. Yeah. But that as I would talk about.
All right.
On this subject.
All right. In the Netherlands specifically, there is this musical feature that we refer to as the Karinkel. I've always found that fascinating. And many have even said that, you know, your Karinkel and how well executed it is can be a very serious factor that determines your fate, you know, as far as the judges are concerned. So can you briefly tell us about that?
Absolutely. Okay, so the Karinkel is essentially the artistic qualities of the lead singer, right? Now, this is driven by obviously quality of voice, technique, etc. But it's more than that. In essence, what you have is, like I said, the choir sings in the Western scale, so you'd have your baritone, bass, tenor, your normal voices as you put it out. But your lead singer would essentially modulate, and it's based on an Eastern tonal scale. In fact, in Eastern music, Middle Eastern music specifically, they use microtones. right? So when we talk of carincles, we talk of quarter tones. In Western music, we speak of semitones and full tones, obviously, but in Eastern music, you'll find they go right down to, as I said, to microtone level. And this is the art that has been developed over hundreds, even thousands of years. So it's influenced by, obviously, the Persian, Middle Eastern music, etc. Even Indian music, you'll see the instruments that they use, it's calibrated to basically give you exactly those pitches and tones, right? So this style of singing is definitely influenced by what we call it's an Arabic word, maqamat, which is modes of music, right? Eastern music. And it's different styles, like, for example, in recitation. So this is when you have your muazzin, right? The guy who calls people to pray. Now in Turkey, these guys go to music schools where they actually taught these things. But over the years, we've been taught by our forefathers, and it's the style, using the Eastern styles, as we call it, a certain lagu or a certain, specific style, but these are, say, driven by geographic regions, right? So someone coming from Morocco will sound different to someone that comes from Egypt, will sound different than someone that comes from Turkey or from Malaysia. And because of the different modes and the dialects and all that, but ultimately, the carinkle is fascinating because it's an art form that are developed over many years. So you actually have mentors. I myself, as you know, are mentoring young guys in the art of Nederlands singing. I think in Bosman, as you know, when you think of a Boston, that thing that stands out above the song. So yes, it's driven by, it's very difficult to score because, as I said, it's quarter tones and microtones, and the art lies in that. How are you able to utilize that and the skill set? But it's influenced by, as I said, recitals, religious texts, and the way influencing of Quranic recitals, etc., and the way you're taught in the obviously that is now has a religious base, but more in the teaching of the language that influences style.
Mr. Wahi, as we come close, in fact, as we are right at the end of our session, sir, I wish to really thank you for your time and the enormous amount of information that you have now fed us with. I'm pretty sure that all those who are going to watch this video are going to take the gift of everything that you have said and have shared with us. You are an inspiration to many young people who aspire to be like yourself and be good leaders of great organizations, and the skills that you impart on youngsters. I'm pretty sure that they're not going to utilize them only in musical gatherings or organizations, but perhaps in other spheres of their lives. So it's an honor to have spoken to you today, and thank you very much for the information that you've shared with us. I'm pretty sure you're looking at 2 minutes before this thing shuts down on us. So I guess the last question would be, you know, everybody has now come to love the Malay Festival. You know, it's a very charming and enchanting choral event. But with the current pandemic that has sort of made its way into our lives in the year of 2020, it has been said that, you know, we might not be seeing the Malay Festival in the new year of 2021. Is there anything that you have to comment on this?
Yeah, I think this currently, as you know, the president of the Malay Choir Board passed on, and now we're in a process, a transitory process, but there's a coordinating council, so it's representatives of each choir. We're certainly planning to have competition. I, for one, would be encouraging online competition. So, yes, there is plans. The competition will happen a bit later.
All right.
Not the usual time frame because of requirements and regulatory requirements. But I think we will definitely look at technology. So don't be surprised if we're going to be singing online. It's something which we need to just work out the details, but I think some of us probably, yeah, we were looking forward to the challenge. So I think definitely it's a case of we need to export this rich tradition. And as I said, it's time to look, there's been exposure, but limited exposure nationally, internationally. I've attended international festivals, but I think now's the time to really expose this culture to the rest of South Africa and the rest of the world. So Mondi, thank you very much for the time. I can tell you my table is full of material that I had that I was going to share. I've got an enormous amount, 40 years and beyond, because let me tell you, I've actually collected stuff from prior to my time, because I went to libraries, I go online, I do my research. Ultimately is to say somebody can take this the next level.
Sir, thank you very, very much. And we wish you all the best with all your endeavors. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to have you on the Heritage.
Thank you, Mondi. Thank you so much, and I'm glad I could contribute in a minute way, and I'm indeed humbled for the opportunity to share some knowledge on this great culture.
Thank you, sir.
For the pleasure. Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye bye.